Hello, my name is Susan Cottrell. I love this conversation we're having about deconstructing down to the bare bones on abuse and trauma in order to rebuild from a whole new paradigm. Before you can rebuild, you must pull down what's already there. And a lot has been done, and there's a lot more to do. So I'd like to talk especially to the men, but I'm not here to accuse you or shame you or scare you or any of those things that you may be feeling, which I understand these days when there's a reckoning for things that were never reckoned before. My purpose is to challenge you to deconstruct enough to free the man inside of you that you want to be, that you were created to be. And if it feels a little odd coming from a woman, that's all part of the box that you've been crammed into. And take consolation in the fact that men have been telling women forever. So I hope you will bear up okay. So that you'll know where I'm coming from, here's a little background on me. My husband Rob and I raised 5 kids in the conservative evangelical church for 20 years. And then 2 of them came out as queer. They were 20 and 16 at the time. And our whole world exploded and all heaven broke loose. It did not feel like heaven at the time. It felt like hell because we'd been so conditioned in the church, which had no room for queer kids. And it felt so confusing and unfamiliar and bigger than we knew how to navigate. But we did navigate it, and we clawed through a lot of broken theology because they're our kids, and we weren't about to sacrifice our kids on the altar of the church. And it was the church that gave us a false choice between our children or God. But we navigated our way through to the true choice, which is between our children and God or the church. We chose our children. We dug through the apparent hell, which was really only hell because it was unfamiliar. And so it was frightening. And it had been made unfamiliar intentionally by church theology. But when we broke through the false bottom of this little cramped box that was labeled God, we fell like a skydiver into the heaven of joy and freedom. We were like Jim Carrey on The Truman Show, who didn't know he was in a box. But once that box cracked open, it opened everything. And that's what happened for us, not just around LGBTQ, but also around race and gender and all the things that we didn't know that we didn't know. I went to seminary, became an ordained pastor, so I can hold my own with the big boys. I can do that. But alas, I am still a woman, so many of them still dismiss me. There is that. And then Rob and I started our nonprofit, FreedHearts, to help parents wholly embrace their LGBTQ kids and to help LGBTQ kids and adults to recover from church and cultural trauma. I talk about this more fully in my TED Talk, which has 1.6 million views. It's at freedhearts.org, and I highly recommend it. Today, let's talk about the box around women and trauma. And through that, we'll see that men also have been put into a box. So I came across a video of Meryl Streep in an interview to promote the movie The Post. This was from 2017, and she's there with actors Tom Hanks and Bob Odenkirk and Brad Whitcomb and director Steven Spielberg. And they're being interviewed by the Washington Post film critic Anne Hornaday. And Meryl's talking about the very disproportionate representation of white men in positions of power in the very male-dominated movie industry and pretty much any industry. And that imbalance inherently underrepresents other groups like women, other races, etc. And Meryl said, if you walk into an all-male board meeting, or it's 2 women and 9 men, It should feel weird. If it's all white or nearly all white, it should feel weird, she said. If you run a company that's serving the population at large, you're serving 51% women. This is an issue of which every woman is aware. We are all aware of it, and all men are not aware. So it's hard. And that's weird. It should feel weird. If it's up to the people, she said, it is up to the people who have the power to open the door, to see it, and to cede the power. And I love this. She said, women have learned the language of men, have lived in the house of men all their lives. We can speak it. You know, she said, when you learn another language like French or Spanish, it isn't really your language until you dream in it. And the only way to dream in it is to speak it. And women speak men, but men don't speak women. They don't dream in it. I love that. I love how she put that. And then Bradley Whitcomb, he played the father in the movie Get Out. He said, I think what Meryl is trying to say, they fell apart. They just, especially Anne and Meryl, the two women just fell apart. It was so funny. But women do speak men. They grow up learning it. And it's the only way to navigate the world. Men never had to learn women. And they need to learn it. We need you to actually learn, to actively learn to speak women and people of color and LGBTQ, but I don't want to overwhelm you. So besides, when you open the one box, the others pop open if you're paying attention. So you may feel already like you have demands on your time and your brain space and that you don't need something else. I understand. But that's just fear. Like Truman in the movie, who fought his way across the sea, which they'd conditioned him to be terrified of, to the edge of the box and up the steps, and he's just about to open the door, over the threshold, and he hesitates. That's fear. But on the other side is freedom, because the biggest box that you'll be freed of is the box of men that the world has shoved you into. And you may have already noticed that the box of what it means to be a man is too cramped. Take it from my husband and other men who have been on this journey. The box is so much smaller than who you are meant to be, than who you want to be. This will free you. Plus, we need you. So let's talk about how to speak women. Consider this your Rosetta Stone to speak women. I've boiled it down to 5 lessons, but I could say so much more on each of these areas that I'm creating a YouTube series to give these ideas the attention they deserve. And we'll do a cost benefit analysis for you. I throw that in for you, men. So lesson 1 is listen. Actively listen to what's going on around you, to the stories of other people, specifically people who aren't like you, who aren't you. Everybody loves their friends. Everybody listens to their friends. It's kind of like listening to yourself. But what really helps is to open up our heart to people who aren't like us, whose stories are not familiar. They're the ones who could use the support. But you have to tune your radar to those stories, or you won't know them. It's interesting that if you walk into the offices of most straight white male pastors, they've got books on theology, on leadership, on organization. They don't have the stories of trauma on those shelves of those on the receiving end of their theology and leadership and organization. These men in positions of power are trained to direct people, to fix people, and to tell them what to do or tell them what they should have done. But that's not what they need. They need pastors to listen, to hear their stories, to believe them, and to think intuitively, how would I feel if that were me? It's Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that says, seek to understand before you seek to be understood. That's what listening does. Women are good at this, listening with empathy. And women will tell you that to feel heard it feels like love, because it is love. It's respect. It's being known. And not to be heard is not to be loved or respected. And it's vital that you believe the stories that you're told. The easiest thing in the world is to think, well, they're exaggerating. It couldn't have been that bad. But how would you know that? The numbers of women saying Me Too are staggering. That's the whole idea of Me Too, is for women to speak up and to be heard and to be believed. And the best thing you can do is say, wow, I had no idea. Tell me more. Women rarely false report. It happens, but it's rare. They're far more likely to underreport for a variety of reasons, like being blamed and shamed and vilified and gaslighted by a culture that is only beginning to maybe take it seriously after how many years? When you don't listen and believe someone in their story of abuse, you actually re-traumatize them. I had a friend, I learned this, I had a friend who was told me horrendous stories of abuse at the hands of several pastors from the age of 4 years old. Horrendous. And I kept saying, oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. I said it like 3 times. And I didn't know that that was a thing about believing or not believing. But she said, I need you to tell me, do you believe me or not? I said, oh my gosh, yes, I believe you. So, I learned from her that it's important to be believed and not everyone does. And listen, I know it's easier on your worldview to think, well, probably wasn't that bad, or, than it is to say, this is a lot worse than I thought. But when you listen to the stories, and there's so many stories, is it really more likely that all these women are lying, or that the men accused are lying? And especially if you think, I could have done that. That could have been me, or I did that. And it didn't even seem that out of line at the time. But then for you to say, you, my peer who's been credibly accused, you don't get the mic anymore. That takes some courage. And that's what we need, is courage. And one more thing about listening. Men interrupt a lot. Much more than women do. Statistically, it is the culture. It's in the culture. Men interrupt women more than they interrupt other men. I mean, they've got to interrupt. They've got all the answers. So it requires a real effort to listen and not interrupt. Rob has improved so much in this. He doesn't interrupt nearly as much as he used to. He really listens well now. And he'll even sometimes say, oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead, which I really appreciate. And sometimes he'll say, do you want me just to listen, or do you want advice? Because I also go to him for advice. So you can ask that. It's very helpful. So what's in it for you? It'll make your relationships easier, so much sweeter, richer, make people around you feel loved and taken care of, and it'll expand you into a better human being. It's impossible to fix things in a way that works for people until we truly listen and understand. Okay, lesson 2, speak up. I know I just told you to listen and not to interrupt, but what I'm asking for here is for you to speak up to other men. So listen to people whose stories you don't know, you don't really understand, whose lived experience you don't have, and then speak up from that illuminated perspective to other men, because they need to hear that too. And when they make a casual, demeaning remark about women, about other races, gay people, trans people, you know what I mean. Locker room talk. Apparently, a lot of harmful casual talk gets dismissed as locker room talk. Bros will be bros. bros before, that's the time to speak. A simple, those kind of comments aren't helpful. Jokes like that aren't funny. Talk like that hurts other people. This is really important. You won't risk your standing. In fact, you'll raise it. The idea is to break through the noise, to bring consciousness to these unconscious comments that people just say without ever having even chosen it. You're in a position that women aren't in. They don't tell those jokes in front of me. You can be a secret ambassador. I wish we had a secret ambassador ring. You want to be a hero to those who could use a hero? Speak up. If you hear something, say something. And you also speak up when you see people. When you say, when people say, I feel seen by you, that's a thing. Make a point to see people you don't normally see as a human being. I was an adolescent and we were going to dinner to like a cafeteria like Luby's. It was my dad, my sister, and me. And we sat at the table and I took my food off the tray, as you do, and I put the tray over on the next door table. And there was a woman there, an employee, middle-aged woman, bussing the table. And my dad and sister looked at me and said, you should say, may I give you this tray? Thank you. Acknowledge her. I didn't know that, but I've never forgotten it. And then a more recent example is in seminary, and a classmate said hi to me every day by name, and I just didn't register it. I said hi back, but I didn't say, hi, Mike, with the same interest and alacrity that he did. And he was of a race that I don't normally really key into. It's a horrible thing to admit, but it's true. And that was a turning point for me. That's when I started seeing people, a broader range of people. See the people who serve you every day. The valet, the waitress, the housekeeper. Did you know that you're supposed to tip the housekeeper? How many of us do that? And see women. See them as people. Women generally see the impact on the person instead of the impact on the plan or the agenda. And that's what we build all this stuff for, isn't it? For the people. It's interesting that that the phrase to lay down your life for someone, we think of it as dying for them, which is kind of a one-shot deal. But it doesn't mean that. It means to lay down your life as you go, your plans, your agenda, to sacrifice for the benefit of others, like parents who allow their theology to shift so they can be the parents their child needs. It means that you're not insisting on your own way all the time or always having to win. If there has to be a winner, there has to be a loser. And men do much more good in the world if they don't always have to win. If they think in terms not of winning, but of win-win. Excuse me. Lesson 3. Open up to your emotions. Men have emotions. They've just been made to sublimate them. The only emotions men are really allowed are angry and fine. Now, it's funny that we have this trope that when a woman says, I'm fine, she's not fine. Big joke. But men do that because they have not been allowed sad or despondent or empathetic or even really excited, and definitely not scared. I'm not scared, you're scared. And forget about tears unless you want to be that guy. I'm not crying, you're crying. It starts so early and so completely, and it crushes a boy's heart so that he walls it over. And I think men have very tender hearts, easily as tender as women. Easily, but they're crushed into walling them up for their own safety. But then he loses access to his heart as much as those around him lose access. When Rob was young, some boys came up to him and kicked him in the groin. He laughed because what was he going to do? It really hurt, but he laughed. And that's a version of fine. And he already knew his options were limited. Humble the poet said this: "What I learned for myself as a man is that when somebody is telling me a problem and I want to solve it, it's not because I care about their problem. It's because their pain is triggering my pain and I want to shut them up. Instead, when someone is feeling pain, I've learned that empathy is just feeling the pain and sitting in the pain with them." To lean into your emotions when you've learned to block them off can feel like it's going to be a free fall, but it's not. It's a freedom fall. It is, and it will round you out and make you happier and much more of a joy to yourself and to others. Do you remember ever taking an elective in school and it had nothing to do with your chosen career or whatever, and you loved it? These emotions are electives that open up your world, and you'll find that they are actually essential. Try it with your trustworthy people, and then just keep opening up. It'll lift some weight off your shoulders, and you'll be very glad that you did. Lesson 4. Men, please tone down your anger. We know you have legit things to be angry about. So do we. But I'm not sure you know how your anger is received, and the people in your care are not the cause of your anger. If you interrogate your anger, you'll identify fear and grief and regret and a desire for control and expectation that the culture has foisted upon you. It's part of the package of manhood in America that you need to be in control at all times. And we women are as bad as anybody else as on placing that expectations on you. But, because we bought into the idea that you're going to fix it. But we're scared too. So we may need to, be open to you having a heart-to-heart like your partner. You can have a heart-to-heart with your partner, with those you love, and ask for support to take the pressure off so you can be who you are. We think that if we could just make things work the way they're supposed to, we wouldn't have to get angry. But it doesn't go that way. We need to stop getting angry, and things will work a lot better. We were watching America's Funniest Home Videos, and there was a boy sitting in his high chair asking for more pancakes. And his mother said, "We don't have any more." And the boy said, "Oh man, are you kidding me? Come on." And we're like, wow, over pancakes. "Oh man, are you kidding me?" Now, if it's disturbing to see me do that, that hurt my throat. Picture it in a 5-year-old boy. Picture it in the man he's going to become, talking to his wife and his children, his employees, the pizza delivery guy. And this boy did not make this up. He saw it somewhere, probably in his house. Because if this behavior were alien to his house, the parents probably would have responded differently. Like, "No, we don't act like that." But they were laughing. I know anger. I've had to deal with anger of my own in the past. And I didn't think I had any anger, any temper at all until I had kids. I'd always vowed I'd never be like my dad, never be like my dad. Then I had kids, and that anger lashed up. And I think it comes from unrealistic expectations. I think I thought I'd be a better mom, or it would be easier or something. I'll be more natural. I don't know. But it is not pretty in men or women. And it took some years of hard work to change that volatile anger that I got, honestly. Because that kind of rage is devastating to everyone around, especially those who are smaller or have less power than you. like the children and the women in your life and anyone in earshot. So here's a challenge for you. Get down on the floor, as I happened to do the other day to play with my grandbaby, and look up. Those people are giants. In fact, ask your partner to stand over you and yell, or just talk sternly while you're sitting on the floor. Try it, and you'll see what I mean. Please, it will impact you. You got to see that anger and nip it, and listen for it in other men and speak into it there too, for everyone's well-being and safety. The partners, the children, and the partners that you protect will thank you. And you will live and engage more authentically and massively reduce your own stress. So lesson 5 is, please don't abandon us. We need you to engage and to stay engaged. Think collaboration, partnership, building together. Together, women do this. They think holistically. It's probably both nurture and nature, but but there are studies around it that affirm that men tend to look at the parts and silos, and women tend to look at holistically. There's a famous experiment called the Heinz dilemma, and the male said it's like a math problem with humans, like you just move people around. The study said, while the women were like thinking holistically on the impact on the whole, and not just the one part. So yeah, it was a hugely impactful study. Well, did you know that the countries who did the best in the pandemic had one common factor: women leaders. These heads of state talked to each other. They said what worked and what didn't. They weren't in a power struggle, each trying to be the domineering country. They helped each other. Women know how to do community. Men know how to do Lone Ranger superhero. And it's hurting us all. I don't blame you. It was conditioned into you. How many action figure hero whatever movies have you seen? Yeah. Men are really good at fixing things too. That's a big strength. And when I've had a lot of feeling talk with my friends, or I'm in a whirlpool of my own emotions, I love when my husband says, okay, this is what you do. We'll do this and this and this. I love that. It's such a balance to me, but that's what it has to be, is a balance. We have to work together in this, not just one or the other. And in our hyper masculinized, uber conservative culture we live in, you men were conditioned to place unrealistic expectations on yourself, to take it all on your shoulders, and it's crushing you. And then you're weighed down with the weight of the world on your shoulders, so you don't have time to listen to someone's story to find out the impact of your actions or inactions on those in your care. How can you? You've got enough on your plate already. No, let us share the burden with you. We need each other. You've got massive skill sets. We've got massive skill sets. Let's work together. We need both in community, and we need you in community. No more Lone Ranger, because when it doesn't work, you abandon the people who need you. Here's what I mean. We used to work with families of kids with cancer, and the mothers were always there for their kids, but only about half the dads were still in the family. The other half went AWOL after the diagnosis. It was stunning to see these women suddenly dealing with life-threatening diagnoses of their children and the father's abandonment of the family. Rob and I talked about that a lot because it was heartbreaking. Men are fixers in their world of money, accomplishment, families, opening jars. They fix everything. So the diagnosis comes down, they can't fix that, so they leave. You've seen this, how men get overwhelmed and leave, like a young dad who can't handle his first family. Too young to have a baby, he's in way over his head, He doesn't know how to be a father and a husband, and so he leaves. Then he grows up and begins another family, and he's a great husband and father. But his first wife is still raising the child alone because no one helped her. John Lennon did this when he left his first wife, Cynthia, and his first son, Julian. And then he grew up and became a great husband and father to Yoko and Sean. This is not news to you that men do this. I mean, First Wives Club. So there's a lot here on our plates. I want to summarize to close because I kind of gave you a lot. So number 1 is listen. Number 2 is speak up to other men. Number 3 is open up to your emotions. Number 4 is tone down your anger. And number 5 is we need you, men. We need you to help clean up from all the trauma and the sexual abuse that comes with a misogynistic, male-dominated culture. You didn't cause this, guys, but men did. So I know it can feel overwhelming, just like the child's cancer. So some men run. But I think that's exactly what happens with the trauma, is it's overwhelming. So what are you going to do? So you just go on. You study theology and whatever, leadership, because you don't know how to deal with this, but we need you to deal with this. So God knows that we need you. Don't abandon us, please. We need you in community to help us heal what's wounded, to rebuild what's been broken. I promise you there's life and joy and healing and freedom on the other side of this, more glorious than you can imagine. There really is. Let's do it. I'd love to walk on this journey with you. If you have any thoughts or questions, just come say hello to us. We'd love it at freedhearts.org.